Hey folks, today's DevOps question has to do with Azure and Azure's uh, product called DevOps. Azure DevOps is basically like GitHub Actions or GitLab Runners or Jenkins. But it's hosted, so it's like SaaS page. So you go into GUI and you figure out what you're going to do with the pipeline. Before I start though, please subscribe to my channel. When I see my subscribers numbers go up, that motivates me to make more videos because then I know this is actually helping somebody. The question is, how would you design a CI/CD pipeline in Azure DevOps to deploy a web application to Azure Web App Service? Now, Azure, first of all, what we already talked about Azure DevOps is like the all-in tool to make CI/CD pipelines. And Azure Web App Services is basically what's called a platform as service. So it's where developers can put their end results called artifacts, so that so now they're live, right? It's the end result of all the developers' work, so that they're actually live and being used by customers. So that's where you want to go at the end of this pipeline that you're going to build through Azure, using this tool called Azure DevOps. So how do we do that? So first, in Azure DevOps, you create a pipeline either in YAML or classic editor, right? Either way. And then in that pipeline, what you're going to do is you're going to trigger the pipeline based on a commit on a repo, because that's where the developer would finish their code and commit. And it says the code is committed, your pipeline will get kicked off, right? And it's going to execute stuff like code build and testing and whatever else you need to do to make sure that this continuous integration pipeline actually builds successfully what's called the artifacts that can be deployed in production. So that's the first half of the process. You're from the code commit, you're building the artifacts that will be deployed in the next step. So the next step is the continuous deployment pipeline that will pick up the artifacts that you created using your automated pipeline in step 2, right? It's going to pick them up and it's going to use another set of scripts, if you will, or YAMLs, if you will, that will put the artifacts into Azure App Service, right? And this is done using something called Azure App Task. It's kind of like equivalent of GitHub. In GitHub Action, there's this thing called jobs, right? Basically, multiple jobs make up a workflow. So your third step will be to create a continuous deployment pipeline that will have one or more Azure Web App task that will take these artifacts and deploy to Azure App Service, which is the end result, as I have mentioned before. Now, once you've done that, you have to have two different ones, right? One for staging and one for production. And you can use either one. You can use blue, green, and there are other ways to test this, right? To make sure that your latest version doesn't break anything. And that's a whole different topic. We should do a video on that some other day. But you have to have a strategy in your pipeline to make sure that before you go from staging to production, you're not breaking production, right? That's the idea. And once you've done that, often before going production, you want to have some kind of approval process, a manual process. If your process is mature enough where you don't need that, that's perfect. But generally, it takes a lot of maturity to get to that. So you want to have some kind of approval process that somebody will do. So you know what, this looks good. Let's go to production. You can add that in or not add that in, depending on how mature your pipeline is. So I hope this was useful. This is the way you go. You set up a CI/CD pipeline in Azure to go from developers building code all the way to production. Hope this was useful, and I will see you in the next video.